Fabulous. And we also have Donna Bukowski, who's one of our educators here at Bywater Solutions. Donna, you want to say hello?
Hey everybody, it's actually Donna Bukowski. Thank you, JC. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk to you a little bit about what we do at Bywater Solutions now that you're getting ready to migrate. Bywater Solutions started back in 2009. Brendan Gallagher and Nate Karula formed our company to provide support for libraries who were migrating to Koha. And we have a great belief in this company that we provide support for you from start all the way through the process of your migration, and then after, when you're live, anything that you need to ask us, we are here as your support specialists. There's multiple ways to get in touch with us, whether it's a phone call or jumping onto our Slack channel to talk to us, submitting a ticket where you'll actually talk with one of the great people in our support department, or even picking up the phone and calling us. And that's our true belief. We're a whole mix of librarians. Most of us have worked in a library prior to coming to Bywater Solutions. We have some, of course, Tolkien fans. Lots of us are knitters, sewers, gamers, and everything in between. So you have a great group of individuals who are here dedicated to open source, giving back to the community. We're going to talk to you today about your Quahog Community migration. Bywater Solutions supports the Quahog Community version. There's 2 major releases a year in the Quahog Community, and we support those, moving your library onto that next release. We're very active in the Quahog Community as well. Most of the members of our team in some way give back to the Quahog community, whether it's release managers, documentation members, quality assurance team, release maintainers, you name it. We all play a part in some part of that community because we believe that it's so important to give back. And we love what we do with the Quahog community, and any way that we can support that in the system. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Addie now, and we're going to talk about the timeline. So once we get that contract signed, the first thing that we do is we have that kickoff call. And on that kickoff call, we talk to various people on your team, whether it's the person who will be in charge of the migration, some of your users, if you form maybe a group of users that will be in charge of the migration, we want you to have them on the call. And then at Bywater, we have members of our support team, our systems team, our migrations team, our education team, and anyone that'll play a critical part in your migration. So now I'm going to let Addie talk a little bit about kind of what happens after that kickoff call.
Thank you, Jessie. So a lot of times in the beginning of the data aspect of the migration, people ask us what types of data we're expecting to see. The most important files are the borrowers, your patrons, and your bibliorecords and item data. So, so if we go over one more page, I have a list of different types of data that we typically see when you initially start the process of your migration with us. So like I said, your bibliorecords and your items are the most important, because those are the physical items in your library. And then the patrons, we want to have that information on your borrowers. Those 2 pieces of data are the most important to get the migration process started, because those are the data types that we're your migration specialist is going to spend the most time examining and reviewing with you, which I'll talk about that process a little bit more. But other data types or data files that we expect to see generally, this isn't applicable to everyone, are your checkout information, so current checkouts, your completed checkouts, historical information, so you can run statistical reports going forward. If you have a serials module in your legacy system, we'd love to see that. Vendor information, fines, holds, course reserves, authority records. But honestly, if there's anything else outside of that list that you can extract from your legacy system, we love to see new data types and more information that we haven't seen before, and we'll definitely try to migrate those for you. It's really important that you take notes during your data extraction for this testing phase. So in the migration, you'll extract your data at least twice. So you'll extract it when we first begin your mapping process so that we can see what your data looks like, and we can create custom scripts for your data and the information in your legacy system. And then we'll get a fresh extract before your go live weekend. It's really important that you take notes so that way you can extract the data the exact same way go live weekend to make sure all those customized scripts and steps that we have written out will still function for your migration weekend. Just one note about when you're doing your extraction from your legacy system, don't feel like you need to open up any of those files and make any changes for us. We really want to be able to make this as stress-free as possible. So we're really familiar with the different data types and file types. So don't worry about doing any cleanup on your end. We will take care of all of that. Let's see. So the most important and laborious part of the mapping process and the data process is organizing your data. So you'll hear us talking about codes a lot, and those codes are in both of your borrowers and your item information. So in your borrowers, the codes that we're most worried about are patron categories. So this is how you group your patrons. Things like adult borrowers, child borrowers, maybe resident and non-resident. Then we have item types. These are they're in your item data. It's physically the type of item. So books, CDs, DVDs, etc. Your shelving location is the physical location in your library. So if you have an adult section, maybe a new section where all of your new materials go. And then finally, a collection codes, which typically just give your patrons more information and more ability to look throughout your catalog in an efficient way. So the patron category and the item types are both necessary. These are really important. They control your circulation rules. A lot of times it can be tempting to make as many item types and as many patron categories as you can to describe your patrons. However, if you can keep it more simple, that's normally better. Just keep in mind how you would want things to be circulated. For example, if you currently you have a resident adult category and a non-resident adult category, but they both are allowed the same checkout quantities and the same checkout periods, then you might consider just condensing that down into an adult category. The same with item types. It is important to make sure that you're thinking about the circ rules and the ways that different things will be circulating. It's also important to consider your patrons during this process. Your shelving locations are great places to give your patrons information on where they can go to find that item they're interested in looking at. And like I said, the collection codes are really fun to allow the patron to maybe go outside of the physical location they're used to going into the library. So if you were to give an item a mystery collection code, they can search all other mystery items you have, and maybe they'd find a really fun mystery DVD instead of a mystery book or an ebook, things like that. So just consider what's most informative to your patrons, what makes sense to you and your collection. We say this constantly, you know the data better than we do, because you're seeing your physical items, you know your patrons and how they work with your catalog. But I do have an example of, I guess, a more explanatory or a way that your patron would understand these codes. So if you had an item that was a book item type, it'd be pretty clear to your patron that it was a book. If you told them that it was in the adult shelving location, they would most likely be able to find that area in your library pretty easily. And again, the mystery collection code, they would know that that book in the adult area was a mystery genre. However, if you use codes that are more specific to the way that you work internally, that the things that the patron wouldn't understand, things like an item type of 7-day reserve, they might not know if that's a DVD or a CD or a book. If you put general location, it gives them no real idea of where to go find that item. And adult collection, again, it's maybe a little too broad, but it's all customizable. It's what makes sense to you, what makes sense to your patrons, and what makes sense with your data. So we have a lot of partners that do this in different ways. Let's see. All right, so when we finally sit down and figure out how you want things to map and be organized, your migration specialist will go through that mapping, and we will assign certain codes to your category codes, your item types, your shelving locations, and your collection codes. Do not get caught up in what these codes look like. These are purely database codes, meaning they're in the database, your migration specialist mucks around with them, but you will rarely ever see the codes yourself, and neither will your patrons. You will see a description, which you make all pretty during the testing phase in your test site. So like I said, don't get caught up in trying to make it really readable. We want them to be short and sweet. We want them to be 10 alphanumeric characters or less, no special characters, and no spaces. Because if you do add in spaces or special characters, it might affect searching and cause the database to get a little confused, because computers are not that smart. So this is a really great opportunity to really utilize your migration specialist to allow your collection to be really useful and informative to your patron. I know I keep harping on the patron experience, but I think it's just a really great time to allow the patron to be able to explore your catalog in ways that they might not have been able to previously in your legacy system, or previously the way that your items were organized. Organization. This is a great time to organize your codes. I love if I get a new partner and they have 50 different item types in their legacy system and I get to condense it down to like 10. That is so much fun to me. It's a great time to go ahead and do that process easily, because we're doing it for you. I mean, take advantage of the migration process to really simplify and organize your collection, which will then make it better for the patron. And count how many times I say patron. So I'm going to pass this back to Jessie so she can talk about training a little bit.
Thanks, Addie. And I'll do a quick intro, and then Donna, we'll have Donna talk here too. So one of the things that we really try to help your library succeed in the whole implementation process is we we as in the educators work hand in hand with the migration team. So that whole process of your migration, really from start to finish, you are learning. And it's important to us that during that process, we provide all of that information for you, whether it's from our policy call, all the way down to after training. So with that, I'll let Donna kind of talk about what the education side of things look like during your migration process.
It is absolute mass chaos. I'm kidding. We have a lot of fun with the training. We know that this is a stressful time for y'all, so we really try to make sure that we have some fun with it and that we get everybody comfortable and things like that. Our focus when we're doing training is to make sure that on day one, on your go live, all of your staff know how to do the essential things to be able to help their patrons, that they can check things in and out, that they can find patrons, that they can add patrons, that they can find your materials, those sorts of things. Sometimes we'll see that our partners get a little bogged down in all the bells and whistles and all the amazing functionality that's in Quahog. So one of the things that we try to do is kind of rein that in a little bit and say, let's focus on the essentials. There's lots of time to be able to do some extra stuff. One of the things I always remind people is that, our training with y'all, whether it's the webinar that we do over a series of 5 webinars, or if it's the 3 days that we do on site, that's not the last time that we're going to be doing training with you, or that we're going to have a webinar or a call or anything with you. We are here for whatever you need. We actually will often encourage you not to tackle things sometimes with go live. If you are using something like acquisitions, we'll often encourage you not to actually go live with acquisitions, but maybe a couple of weeks after you've gone live and things have calmed down and everybody's comfortable, we'll have another Zoom session and we'll go ahead and do acquisitions at that point. So just as an example, it really is entirely up to y'all how you want this training set up, how we can help you. We do the policy call like Jesse had mentioned, and that's really an opportunity for your educator to get a chance to learn a little bit more about your library, your workflows, any particular things that you have that are unique within your collection or your library policies and things like that. We then take all of that information that we gather and we set up your test site. We take all of the amazing work that Addie has done, or the other data migration folks, and put that all into a test site. It's a closed site, so you get to play with that as much as you want. You can go ahead and delete patrons and change bib records and add fines to patron accounts, all sorts of fun stuff, without worrying that you're doing any damage to your data. So it really is a completely comfortable place for folks to be able to do some testing in there and seeing how things work. We make sure that everything is working the way that you expect it to. When I check out a book to this patron category, does it check out for the right amount of time? Can I place holds on it? All of those sorts of things. So basically what you've got is that test system that's going to be very, very close to what your live system is like. I know one of my frustrations in my career in libraries was that I would be shown something, and then when the actual product was unveiled, it was completely different than what we've been practicing in. We make sure that that doesn't happen. We make sure that your site is as close as possible to the live site as we can get it. And then that's what we're training on. We're training on that live site. So you have lots of opportunities to go ahead and get in there and have that set. I see that Chad has just asked a question of how far in advance of the go live is the test system set up. Typically we'll have that up about 4 weeks prior to training, and the training is usually done a month prior to go live. So it can be up anywhere between 6 and 8 weeks prior to your go live site. But the goal that we really look at is making sure that you have 4 weeks between our training and your go live to get in there and really get your hands in there and making sure everything is set up the way it is. One of the things that's so important of what we do as far as setting up and doing the training is we don't just tell you how to use Quahog, we go through your workflows. We have conversations about how do you handle lost books? How do you handle patrons that owe money? How do you handle fines? How do you handle cataloging? And then we walk through all of those processes and making sure that you're comfortable with how that works. We work with you to set up like your overdue notices and all of those sorts of stuff. All of that data will carry over to your live site. So Addie does some sort of magic. I have no idea what, because I'm not a data person, but she does some sort of magic and gets all of that stuff out of the test site and into the live site. So you're not setting up your circulation rules again, and you're not redoing all of that work that you've already done. So we try to make it as smooth as possible for y'all. And then again, kind of the last thing I want to emphasize with all of our training is that it's not a one and done. We are here for you throughout the process. We have no hesitation in setting up a Zoom call on the fly and saying, hey, you know what, Eric in Alaska, let's go ahead and set up a Zoom call to talk about this process that you're getting stuck on or that y'all need some clarification on. Definitely not a problem for us. We love being able to do that. We love connecting with all of y'all and seeing how your libraries work. And one of the things to remember at heart, as Jesse said, is that we're all basically librarians. I myself have a background in adult services and reference, so I am after that reference question. I want to figure out how to make that work for y'all and how to make that workflow the best that it can be. So that's what we really are focusing on is how can we make y'all as comfortable as possible. But training is really completely customizable. We'll do whatever you need for it. And it really is a lot of fun. So. Anything else, Jesse, that I forgot to mention?
No, you gave a very thorough overview, Donna. It was excellent. So the last slide that we have here is testing, and we could probably all talk a little bit about this. I will say it's critical to really get your hands in there, look at the data, look at the things you set up with your educators, test. You know, make sure that things are working the way you expect. And if they're not, ask questions. You know, that communication line is huge. I'll let Addie and Donna jump in here too, because I'm sure there's things for them, but the testing is always like we'll say it 100 times like a broken record. test, because that ensures that you'll have a successful go live.
On my notes, I literally have test in all caps with exclamation points. So it's true, though. It's so important not only to get familiar with Quahog and your new system, but to confirm that the data is looking like you would expect. A lot of times during the testing, if you're truly testing properly, you'll realize this item record is missing this really important field that we wouldn't have noticed before, but because you tested and you were poking around in an item or a borrower that you're really familiar with, you notice that. And it's so important, and we can make changes throughout the whole testing process to make sure that the site's getting closer and closer to what it would be at go live, and to make sure that your site at go live is exactly as you would expect and as you would want it to. I always encourage people to walk through their personal workflows that they're responsible for in their library and ask your coworkers or your staff to do the same thing, because they will notice something they're expecting to see. And like I already alluded to, look at accounts, your own borrower account, maybe a frequent borrower that you see, item records that you're really familiar with, to ensure that every field you're expecting to be there is. And please let us know if you want something to just move. It's not difficult for us to make changes. We'd rather do it during this time to make sure that your Quahog on day one of your go live is just perfect for you.
And just to re-emphasize what Addie said, we have our own testing things that we're talking about during training, and we say test. So Addie says it 3 times, we say it 4 times. It's really, really important to do that testing. Again, not just so that you become familiar with Quahog, but also that your data is correct. And Eric just asked a question which preempted what I was going to say, which is, don't worry just about, doing your workflows, because we all know that we have tasks that we perhaps only do once a year and we forget about them. We do have a testing plan, a rather extensive testing plan that you go through, and it comes up with every single possibility that we can think of things that you might need to check in your system. And so we do have that broken out by module. We share that with you so that you can go through and check all of those things that you might forget about or not think about and things like that. So yes, Eric, we do have that available. And again, this is the voice of experience. Check things out. We'd rather solve things ahead of time than to have a staff member worrying on day one with go live. But yeah, testing, get used to it. It'll be great. We promise.
All right. Well, first let's open it up. Does anyone have questions that you're thinking about? I saw so many people asking questions there in the chat and QA. If there's other questions that Addie or Donna can answer, please let us know. Adam mentioned too, during that testing phase, you can't break anything. So get in there and get your hands dirty. And Adam was a director at a library in Hernando County, Florida, who used Quahog before he came to Bywater Solutions. So he can say that during his migration period, they were in there testing like crazy. We have a question, what about acquisitions? We do go through the acquisitions process during training. I'll let Donna or Addie jump in here. I don't know, Jean, if you want specifics on like setting up and testing, we absolutely do, but I'll let them go ahead and answer that.
Hi, Jean. Yes, we absolutely can walk through the process with acquisitions. We actually will set up like sample budgets and things like that so that you have one that you can play with. At the same time, you can even set up your final budget so you don't have to recreate that. But we walk through the whole process of how the acquisitions process works. The only thing that we cannot do before go live is actually if you are using something like an EDI plan. That presents a little more challenges as far as getting that set up for in the testing scenario, but we do have relationships with all of the major companies. Okay, not using EI, good, thank you. But no, we'll walk through the whole process. We'll do the uploads and the staged records and all of those sorts of things. And then I also saw that there was a question about trying out texting and PayPal. PayPal, as Jesse said, we can set that up in the sandbox mode and try it that way. With your texting, and your email notifications, we can set those up also. There's a system preference in here that we just go ahead and turn it on really quickly and redirect all emails and texts from the proper email addresses that they're supposed to go to a test email address. So you'd actually be able to see what a text would look like when it comes through, and then also see what the emails would look like when it comes through too. So yeah, we've got all of those that you can go ahead and take a look at.
Fabulous.
Sorry, I meant cereals, but I should actually let Jessie talk about cereals because she is a cereals expert and answers all of my questions about cereals.
Yeah, so absolutely with cereals, we can go through the process of setting up cereals in your system. We'll go through and create prediction patterns and frequencies and test them in the system. We'll go through the process of receiving. You can even set up like a grace period within all of your cereals, which allows you to essentially Quahog will mark them late if they're not received by a certain period of time within that grace period. There's a cron job, which is just a script that runs in the background, and it will look at the grace period in your subscription. And if it's not been received by a certain date, it will mark it late. There's a claims module within that cereals section, which allows you to essentially, in the acquisitions module, there's a vendors section, and in the vendors essentially contact information, you can put in if like a sales rep or an individual or a customer service rep has an email address, and that email address can be tied into late cereals. If the checkbox is marked, you can actually send claims to the vendor that's hooked up in the system. And, you know, I always say that I had a really good relationship with my vendor when I was working at the library. So I would just email them and say, hey, I have, you know, something that I need to place a claim on. Quahog also lets you extract your list of claims for a particular vendor, and then you can email that off. It exports in a CSV file. But yeah, we go through the whole process of setting up your cereals, getting your prediction patterns in there and your frequencies in the system.
And if you saw, Chad had a question about, can you see what Novelist and other integrated vendor content looks like in the test mode?
Yes, so with Novelist, that is a system preference within your administration. So you can set that up and that will be visible. You can actually see Novelist on both the OPAC, Quahog's OPAC, and Quahog's staff client. So you can actually do that as well. Overdrive and Recorded Books, I guess, would be the two other vendors. If you're thinking about like Syndetics or Content Cave for cover images, those are essentially all system preferences within your Koha administration that you can set those up. And Chad, I see your question here. What's the process like for setting up the look and feel of your front homepage? Oh, gee whiz, we should have had Lucas on here, because Lucas could talk about that whole process. When we talk about that kickoff call, we open up several tickets, and one of the tickets is designing your OPAC. And just as you have that test system for the staff side, you have a test system for your OPAC. So Lucas, who is our web designer / developer / everything else, he works with you to bring in your look and feel, your logo, anything that you want to appear on that OPAC, and he works with you during that migration period to tweak it, and then it's ready for you when you go live in production.
One of the things I want to add in here too, which is, in my experience, one of the most surprising things about Koha, is that you can also do it yourself. We love Koha, we support Koha, but we are more than happy to teach you how to do it yourself too. It's entirely up to y'all. So if you have someone who really likes doing that sort of customization with HTML and CSS and all these other initials and things that I don't quite get, they can do that themselves. They are all controlled by system preferences. You can go in there, and if you want to change your background of your OPAC from lime green to yellow to pink polka dots, you go ahead and have fun with that. So you can do all of that stuff. But again, as Adam said, we are always here to help you customize that too. So it really is kind of runs the gamut of how much do you want to get in there, get your hands on it. We also have some very handy tools that will help you do those sorts of things too. So a lot of support for you there, and you can really just kind of make it look almost however you want. I don't remember that we've ever told a partner, no, we won't do something. We may encourage them to look at different colors, but you can do a lot of really great customization with that and really make the look and feel. And actually, if you go to our website, you can see a list of all of our partners, and you'll see that while some of the elements of the OPAC are the same, there is a lot of differentiation amongst our partners as far as what they've done with customizations. And I can see Jay-Z is navigating there right now, but it really does give you a sense of how you can customize your OPAC. And one of the things we actually encourage you to do is say, take a look at some of these other libraries and pick and choose what you want. Like, I really want this from this library and this from this library, and we'll do our best to go ahead and get that to look like the way that you want that.
This is one of my favorites that I always show off, because I love how they have just made that search screen right in the middle, search for books, videos, materials. I love that. And, you know, as Donna mentioned, any look and feel that you want, you can bring in. So all of these are hyperlinked to go out to the partners OPAC. So take a look. You can scroll through. It's broken down by academic, public, special. So you can scroll through and look at any of these. Lisa has asked, can the homepage update date, listing, banner info like holiday closings, story times, etc.? Absolutely. There's something called a news feature in Koha, which you can use to project messages out onto the front of your OPAC. There's also a little widget, we can call it. You can see here I have mine set to currently open from 8 to 8. So you can set that off. There's also banners that you can add. For example, right now with like COVID, if your library may be closed, you can put a banner up top. So there's all types of customizations that you can do. I'm just bringing up another one that I know they do a really nice job too. This is Bedford Public Library in Texas. You can see they have a link up that tells them right away the library is closed. And then they also have like little widgets that you can look at and push through information. You can add in that footer information as well. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Addie and Donna, for speaking your wisdom to the rest of the group here and getting everyone excited about migrating. Adam, thank you for answering chats and questions and answers. And again, if you have any questions for us prior to your migration, please let us know, and we're here to help. Everyone take care and stay safe.